Good afternoon. My name is Eduardo Lago. I am a novelist and the current director of Instituto Cervantes New York. And this is a continuation of a conversation that took place over a year and a half ago between two great writers with many similarities and many differences, of course. But they have, in many ways, they have been pursuing each other through texts and lacking a common language except for French. I am not going to sum up or to try and sum up their trajectories or recite their bibliography or try to convey the idea of their poetics, because we expect that to happen through the conversation. There's going to be a translator because Mr. Villamatas is going to speak in French and Paul Auster is going to speak in English. I'll translate the questions there and then they will be able to ask each other questions. They discovered each other in different languages, and they were very intrigued by what the other did. And also there's a moment when they become sort of characters of each other in oblique ways. Enrique Villamatas is a Spanish writer from Barcelona, and his first books are beginning to appear in English. Bartleby and Company is one of them. And Montano's Malady and New Directions is going to publish some more books in the future soon. Paul Auster is really very well known in Spain. He has a great readership, and he's published by Anagrama, an independent publisher that we have celebrated in the context of the Pen Festival with a number of the most emblematic writers. But here are two of the most emblematic writers of that house, of that publishing house. And as I say, they discovered each other in different languages. Enrique Villamatas read Paul Auster in French, and in what language did you discover?
I first read Enrique's work in French because unlike America, where his work is only just beginning to be translated. Now, in France, Villamatas is a very well-known writer, and he has many books translated into French, very well translated too. And I was first given a copy in Spanish by Jorge Herralde, our publisher, a mutual publisher in Spain, of Bartleby and Company. And then sometime after that, when the French translation came out, he sent it to me. And that's how I got to read Enrique for the first time. So this must be 8 or 9 years ago, something like that.
Dice que te descubrió como hace 8 o 9 años leyendo en francés, cuando tu editor Herralde le enseñó un ejemplar de Bartleby y compañía. ¿Y tú cómo descubriste a Paul Auster? ¿En qué idioma lo fuiste leyendo? In what language did he discover you and how?
Lo leí hace, no lo sé, una gran infinidad de años. El primer libro fue La invención de la soledad, el primer libro que leí, y a continuación la trilogía de Nueva York.
I read him a very long time ago, many years ago, and the first year was La invención de la soledad and la trilogía
de Nueva York.
La trilogía de Nueva York, many years ago.
New York Trilogy.
La invención de la soledad tiene un título en inglés, pero claro.
Voy a traducir yo y si te necesitamos te lo decimos así para complementarlo. Ok, sí.
Bien, la invención de la soledad me interesó muchísimo, aparte de esa primera parte que es la reflexión sobre la muerte del padre. Me interesó la segunda parte, que es menos conocida de este libro, donde habla de las habitaciones de los escritores.
About the invention of solitude, he was very interested in the first part, of course, which deals with the death of your father, but even more so with the less commented part, which is the second one, where you discuss the rooms that writers live in.
Yo creo que esa parte se ha prolongado en el tiempo en toda su obra y, por ejemplo, en Scriptorium, su novela, está muy presente esta idea de un personaje cercano al mundo de Samuel Beckett, que está en una habitación donde piensa y escribe, reflexiona y vive.
He thinks that second part is seminal, that it expands into other works that you have written later, and it's very tangible in a book like Scriptorium, and he also feels the presence of Beckett.
Y lo que no sé es si está de acuerdo mínimamente con lo que he dicho.
What he does not know is whether you agree with him or not.
Whether
you agree minimally with what he says.
Well, I think rooms are a very important part of my work. There's no question about it. And enclosures of various kinds, all kinds of architectural geometries. But at the same time, there is also a lot of dealing with open space. A book like Moon Palace, where they're out in the wilderness, or the music of chance. The man is driving around the country all the time, moving from one place to the other. So there's a kind of enclosure and openness.
Él dice, Enrique, que... You translated already?
Algo, alguna parte.
Él piensa que, además de ser muy importante para él la arquitectura de los espacios cerrados, sí, que en muchos momentos de su obra, como El Palacio de la Luna y otros, también tiene mucha importancia para él los espacios abiertos.
Sí, la prueba es que citaba como habitación de escritor en La Invención de la Soledad la isla de Robinson Crusoe.
The proof of that is that in The Invention of Solitude you cite as a writer's room that the island of Robinson Crusoe.
Que me encantó cuando lo leí porque nunca lo había pensado y es evidente que es una isla claustrofóbica por otra parte.
He loved it because he had never thought of that, and it is very obvious that it's a claustrophobic island.
Y que lleva pues al aislamiento del escritor para escribir y apartarse del mundo, para poder escribir sobre el mundo al tiempo que tiene que hablar de algo de lo que se ha apartado, que es el mundo, ¿no?
Which facilitates the task of the writer by being isolated and allowing himself to speak of the world out there at the same time.
Yes, I think in some way, the more confined a person is, at least the way it seems to function in my books, the more free he tends to be.
Le da la impresión a Paul Auster que cuanto más confinados están los escritores y los personajes, más libres son en sus libros.
Paradoxically.
Paradójicamente.
Que sería como el sótano en el que quería escribir Kafka, ¿no? Ese sótano en el que quería escribir Kafka, que era el lugar ideal de la escritura.
That makes him think of Kafka's cellar, which he saw as the ideal place for writing.
But anyway, I just wanted to say my response to Bartleby and Company, which was the first book of Enrique's that I read, it made a tremendous impression on me. I was just so fascinated, on the one hand, by the humor in it, but also by the tremendous knowledge that he has of all kinds of writing, and his compassion for writers, and the fearlessness with which he will take on literary subjects and make them part of what he's writing about.
A él le causó una profundísima impresión Bartleby y compañía por el vasto conocimiento que tienes y demuestras de la literatura, pero también por la enorme compasión humana que hay en el tratamiento de los temas, mezclado con una cierta fiereza en cómo te aproximas a ellos.
La compasión es auténtica y la erudición algo falsa.
The compassion is authentic and the erudition false. Somewhat fake.
Nevertheless, all the names are there, and you've read all the books.
I'm going to ask Enrique, what is this thing he wrote titled I'm Not Auster? tienes el libro ahí. Te voy a preguntar qué es esta cosa que has hecho tú que se titula No soy Oster. ¿Tienes el libro contigo?
Sí, se ha convertido en un atrecho para una obra teatral. No soy Auster, es un libro que es un pequeño texto que escribí. Cuento. Bueno, en realidad el libro parece pensado para aparecer hoy en este escenario. Forma parte, es un gasto que ha hecho la producción del festival para que interviniera en este coloquio.
What do you say?
He says that in reality this was like an atrecho for a play, and that the whole sense of it was to write it so that he could produce it here on the stage today.
To show it, to show it.
Hace muchos años, hace 8 años, en una revista mexicana escribía mensualmente y no sé por qué decidí escribir un artículo que se titula No soy Auster.
8 years ago, he used to contribute to a Mexican magazine, and one day he does not know why he decided to write something titled "I'm not Oster."
Creo que era debido a que hablaba mucho con mi madre sobre el tema. Yo le hablaba, a mi madre le gusta Paul Auster por muchos motivos, entre ellos el literario, y yo la convencía de que me parecía un poco y ella me decía que no me parecía demasiado.
So he thinks that, among other reasons, he wrote this piece because his mother was very fond of your work, and then he said to his mother that he wrote in a way that was very similar to yours, but her mother would not necessarily agree.
I see, that's very right.
Y escribí el artículo para la revista mexicana que tuvo una cierta repercusión porque es una revista que permite en Internet que escriban los lectores y estaba lleno de lectores que escribían acerca solamente del título. No soy Auster y decían, todos lo sabemos.
So he wrote this. The good thing about this is that it was posted on the internet because it was an internet magazine. This allowed many readers to discuss the article, but they would only focus on the text. So when they said "I'm not Oster," they wrote back to him, "We know that."
Entonces, ante este fracaso, insistí en el tema en otro texto para este libro que se ha publicado en España.
He took that as a personal failure that prompted him into writing something more substantial, which is this.
I see, okay. Well, also I see there's another piece in there about Hemingway, and I'm reminded of a book of Enrique's that is going to be published by New Directions soon, is a non-fiction book about his years in Paris in the 70s. And I recommend this book highly, and there's a hilarious business about a Hemingway lookalike contest in the book. I just giving you a foretaste of what pleasures are in store for you.
Él dice que también hay una alusión importante a Hemingway y quiere decir al público que pronto se va a publicar el libro de París no se acaba nunca y que hay como un pequeño adelanto de lo que se van a divertir leyendo lo de Hemingway.
También debo decir que este texto lo escribí después del encuentro que tuvimos en el Instituto Cervantes hace 1 año y medio en Nueva York, de modo que está relacionado con este día en el que para la nota periodística en España se insistió en que nos parecíamos, porque íbamos vestidos aquel día igual, llevábamos los mismos zapatos. En fin, entonces yo pensé, porque ya había pasado tiempo desde que mi madre me había desengañado, que es cierto que nos podíamos parecer en algunos aspectos, pero que era grandiosa la diferencia que había en lo demás, como es normal entre los seres humanos.
He says that this book is also a consequence of the conversation you guys had with me at Cervantes a year and a half ago, and that he felt that he had to write it because that day he saw too many similarities. For instance, you were dressed exactly the same,
yes.
You were wearing the same type of shoes, and this was a way of getting back at her mother, who continued to insist after his big disappointment that she didn't find similarities, but there were some.
Yeah, we had the same sweaters on and the same shirt and the same shoes. Today, different shoes, but... I only have one other pair of shoes, and they're just like those.
Que son los mismos.
Perhaps, quizás we could go back to an idea that we discussed before, that would be asking you the same question about a number of things and see how you respond to that. And Enrique was interested in talking about the creative process in each of your cases. Las preguntas que hacíamos sobre el proceso creativo que te interesaban a ti para responder. So,
I don't really know what that word means, so maybe Enrique can answer first. What
que no sabe lo que
creative
significa,
process-
que quizá lo puedas contestar tú primero.
¿Qué significa el qué?
Lo de proceso creativo.
Ah, claro, yo tampoco lo sé muy bien.
He doesn't know very well either.
Pero sí, no, bueno, era algo que habíamos hablado en el taxi cuando veníamos aquí, ¿no?
We were talking about that in the limousine on our way here.
Acerca, pero claro, a mí me parece que es como una indiscreción bastante grande preguntarle algo sobre su proceso creativo, pero lo voy a hacer.
He thinks there's a huge indiscretion. He realizes to ask such a thing now, but he's going to do it anyway.
Okay.
En algunos de los últimos libros, los personajes hay un momento en que parecen abandonados, creo que deliberadamente por el autor, pero no sé si es verdad o no que es deliberadamente. Abandonados que vuelven al mundo real, que es el mundo en el que todo sucede sin más, es decir, que no hay un novelista detrás en aquel momento.
He has the impression, and he is genuinely intrigued by this, that in your last books, it seems that your characters are, to some extent, left at their mercy in the real world without, so to speak, the protection of the novelist.
Y a mí se pregunta si es deliberado.
He wants to know if it is deliberate or if it is the case.
Characters left at the mercy of the world without the protection of the novelist. I think in some sense, maybe all my books are like that, from the very beginning. The last two published books of mine, Travels in the Scriptorium and Man in the Dark, go together. I looked at them as a diptych because they're very similar in structure. One takes place during the course of one day, the other takes place during the course of one night. In each case, it's a man in a room, an old man. Blank in the first book is older than Brill in the second book, but nevertheless, they're men of a certain age. And one is about light, the other's about dark. And both of them are physically impaired, and in the case of Mr. Blank, mentally as well, because he can't remember anything. I'm happy to say that the newest book that I've written, but it's not yet published, is not set in a room. It's out there in the world again, and the characters are much younger. But I just wanted to read one little paragraph from this new book, which will be out in November. The title of the book is Invisible, and this comes...
Let me translate.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Very quickly. Dice Enrique que todos sus libros tienen una unidad bastante coherente y que esto que tú detectas en los últimos ya estaba en los anteriores, que las estructuras son muy similares, que a veces puede ocurrir durante el transcurso de un día o el transcurso de una noche, pero que siempre hay en la figura, como has detectado tú viendo un hombre viejo en una habitación. Esto subraya, según sea en un libro o en otro, el contraste entre luz y oscuridad, y que en general estos personajes tienen dificultades o discapacidades físicas o incluso mentales, pero que se siente muy satisfecho de comunicar que en el próximo libro no es así, que no ocurre en una habitación, sino en el mundo, y ahora va a leer un pequeño fragmento en inglés.
I just wanted to read these few sentences, which comes towards the end of this novel. And this is a French woman, a literary scholar. She's on an island in the Caribbean for very mysterious reasons. And this is what she writes in her journal. I tried to read, but reading was beyond my powers of concentration just then. All the useless books I had packed for my holiday in the sun, novels by Bernhard and Villa Matas, poems by Dupin and Dubuchet, essays by Sachs and Diderot, all worthy books, but useless to me now that I have reached my destination.
Es una cuestión, a ver, que acordándome de la invención de la soledad, él habla de que en la vida las cosas suceden, solo suceden, sin más, dice sin más, mientras que en una novela las cosas suceden porque detrás está un autor que les da la trama a esas cosas que suceden sin más. Y por eso he hecho la pregunta anterior, porque a mí me ha parecido que en alguna ocasión en estos libros hay momentos en que parece que deje que las cosas sucedan sin más hacia el final de esos libros. Y sospecho que esta es la idea de intentar escribir al final de una novela como si sucedieran solo las cosas en la vida. Y bueno, puede ser que sea simplemente una lectura más de sus intenciones, pero...
There are many nuances in his perception. He's going back a little bit to the invention of solitude, where you say somewhere, you say that in life things happen, period. Whereas in literature, in real life, whereas in literature, things happen because there's an author behind, and the impression he wants to go back to again is that he suspects that you, in your books, you're trying somewhat to allow things happen on the page as they happen in real life, period.
I think he's right. I agree with you there. It's a very good comment. I agree.
Entonces, si es así, y no estaba preparado, quiero decir, pero si es así, que me siento muy feliz de entrada, debo decir que lo que me gusta de esto es que lo considero algo muy atrevido de haber hecho, es decir, haberse atrevido a hacerlo.
First, he's very relieved to know that he's right, and because he wasn't sure, and then he thinks that is a very daring thing to do for a writer.
Porque se presta a veces a lecturas no como la mía, sino lecturas de creer que ha perdido a última hora las riendas de la acción, lo cual es impensable en cualquier escritor que sea consciente de lo que hace.
Because, and I'm going to add something that he said to me in the taxi that sheds light on what he is going to say. He thinks that you have been seriously misunderstood in some places by some critics, where due to their lack of, penetration or even intelligence, they think that what is happening is that you have lost control of the craft, or whereas what you're trying to do is something much more profound that these guys don't grasp.
I'm sure that's true.
Le he contado que añadí que iba a decir lo que habíamos dicho en el taxi de los críticos y que no se enteran, y me ha dicho que está seguro de que ese es el caso.
Entiendo. Bueno, a mí me parece que cualquier escritor de cierto ya nivel es consciente, en el fondo siempre, de lo que hace. Es decir, que si quiere incluir una novela que no tiene nada que ver con la misma novela dentro de esa novela, sabe perfectamente que se arriesga a que digan que eso no se suele hacer, y si lo hace es porque es consciente de que él sí que lo quiere hacer.
He thinks that when a writer of your trajectory decides to do this type of things, like including a novel within a novel that apparently might not make sense to do, he knows that there is a profound artistic reason for you or anybody to do that. Which leads me to a question that is a concern of his. Lo que me hace hacer una pregunta que es la tuya. And Enrique wrote a very funny and very interesting piece recently, which is titled "The Talent of the Reader." And his main argument, el principal argumento del talento del lector es Well, everybody demands talent from the writer, but sometimes we forget to demand talent from the reader. You have to do your job too. La idea de que el lector también tiene que hacer su trabajo y no ser perezoso.
Sí, ¿puedo leer el trozo aquel o no?
Okay, yes.
Sí.
He's going to. This is going to be.
Estaba a punto de perderlo, este texto, pero
¿Quieres intentar traducirlo o lo intento yo como?
bueno, vamos a ver, es un texto muy breve, no sé si leerlo o resumirlo.
Yo creo que es mejor resumirlo, ¿no? O no sé. They want you to read it. He hesitates whether to read it aloud or...
No, read it, and then is there a translation?
No es esto,
that he
no es
can-
esto, no es esto.
Or you can,
Es esto.
okay.
Okay, if you go slowly, I can translate sentence by sentence. Es muy largo.
Es esto.
Okay.
Pero puedo convertirlo en menos.
He can make it smaller. Okay, no sé.
No,
No, bueno, pues lo resumes después en inglés.
Okay, todo.
No,
Ok.
el final. El fin.
Okay,
El
he's going to
final,
read
que
it.
es lo más deliberado.
I'll try to grasp these essential ideas.
Cuando despertaron del ensueño de las hipotecas y de aquel poderío económico que habían creído eterno, cuando despertaron en pleno centro del torbellino que lo arrasaba todo, el libro seguía ahí. Era asombroso, nada ni nadie había conseguido alterarlo, nadie lo había movido del lugar de siempre. Miraron incrédulos, parecía mentira. Allí estaba totalmente imperturbable. Todo esto no ocurrió en otro tiempo, sino que está sucediendo ahora mismo, 2 de mayo del 2009. Parece como si en estos encuentros literarios en Nueva York hubieran abierto horizontes y todos ahora regresáramos a la vieja costumbre del buen libro y a recordar que ese gran libro siempre ha estado ahí y es la distracción por excelencia porque nos permite la ilusión de un dominio del tiempo más allá de las catástrofes y crisis. Y esa ilusión nos sustrae al devenir implacable que conduce a esa muerte que se esconde en los relojes en una novela de Lawrence Stern. Heredero legítimo de Cervantes, Stern renovó la relación del escritor con el lector, esa relación que últimamente parece regresar a un primer plano, pues existe la impresión de que algo empieza a moverse. En pleno ensueño de las hipotecas y del becerro de oro de la novela gótica, se forjó la estúpida leyenda del lector pasivo. La caída del monstruo está dando paso a la reaparición del lector con talento y se replantean los términos del contrato moral entre autor y público. Respiran de nuevo los escritores que se desviven por un lector activo, por un lector lo suficientemente abierto como para permitir en su mente el dibujo de una conciencia radicalmente diferente a la suya propia. Si se exige talento a un escritor, debe exigírsele también al lector, porque no hay que engañarse, el viaje de la lectura pasa muchas veces por terrenos difíciles que exigen tolerancia, espíritu libre, capacidad de emoción inteligente, deseos de comprender al otro y de acercarse a un lenguaje distinto al de nuestras tiranías cotidianas. Como dice Wilhelm Bock, no es tan sencillo sentir el mundo como lo sintió Kafka, un mundo en el que se niega el movimiento y resulta imposible siquiera ir de un poblado a otro. Las mismas habilidades que se necesitan para escribir se necesitan para leer. Los escritores fallan a los lectores, pero también ocurre al revés, y los lectores les fallan a los escritores, cuando solo buscan en estos la confirmación de que el mundo es como lo ven ellos. Los nuevos tiempos traen esa revisión y renovación del pacto exigente entre escritores y lectores. Vuelve el lector con talento. Esto lo publiqué hace 2 semanas en...
I think it's long enough.
en-
He published this like 2 weeks ago.
que lo publiqué hace 2 semanas en un periódico español con la intención de decir que volvía el lector con talento para ver si eso se va haciendo verdad. Como hoy en día lo mediático tiene una fuerza, si corre el bulo de que ha vuelto el lector con talento, puede que llegue a creerse esto y que avance todo.
Well, it's going to be really very difficult to sum up because it's very rich and pervaded with his unique sense of humor. But the text begins evoking the time of crisis we're living in today, of people worried about mortgages, all this turmoil we're going through, the crisis. And in the midst of this, echoing a famous short story by Augusto Monterroso, the book remains there. intact. So people looked at it in disbelief that such an object as a book was there unmoved. He emphasizes in the article that this is happening now, May the 2nd, 2009, and he says that the book remains a unique form of both entertainment and opening minds and opening horizons. And he goes back to the idea of catastrophe and crisis, and then mentions a very powerful image from Lawrence Stern in Tristram Shandy, death hiding in clocks. And he has the feeling that something is starting to move, some kind of gold calf has been found, which is the reader. He uses that as a rumor. There's the rumor, the reader with talent is coming back. We're going to have again intelligent readers, and he thinks that the whole thing about writing entails a moral contract between reader and writer, and it's for the two sides to fulfill their obligations. And I think that what literature is about is drawing the landscapes of consciousness. I don't understand my own handwriting here, but he goes back to saying things that he cannot think of anything more difficult than trying to convey the idea of what the world is like, as Kafka tried to do, that he would like us all to place ourselves in the place of writers like Kafka. And the essential thing is that, going back again to the main argument, that he has the hope that the real reader, the active reader, the intelligent reader is back. Perhaps it's just, a supposition, but he...
Well, I've said many times, and I'll say it again, I've always thought of the novel as a unique place in the world. And because for me, it is the only place in which two strangers, absolute strangers, can meet on terms of absolute intimacy. That is, the writer and the reader. And as we all know, every reader reads a different book. No two people have the same response to a work of art. Yes, there are stupid readers. There are people who don't know what they're reading and they can't engage. They don't know what the writer is talking about. And then there are brilliant readers also. And I suppose one looks for those brilliant readers. One prays for them to be there. And they certainly do exist. There's no question about it.
¿Le parece que la novela es un lugar único en el que se produce el fenómeno extraordinario de que tiene lugar el encuentro entre dos extraños completos, entre los que se establece una relación de intimidad absoluta? Él dice que en este pacto se produce una situación de que cada lector lee un libro distinto y que sí, que está de acuerdo en que hay muchos lectores estúpidos, pero también hay brillantes.
Pero si se pone de moda no ser estúpido leyendo, puede ser también una manera de que avancemos también.
He thinks that if not being a stupid reader becomes a fashion, it can be a sign of progress.
The fact is, most stupid people don't read books. So we've winnowed out a lot of the uninteresting readers to begin with. I think most people go to books with a kind of enthusiasm, sense of expectation, because it takes work to read a book. You really have to engage yourself in it very deeply. It's not like watching a movie or looking at a painting. It's a long commitment to something, and you only get something out of it if you put a lot of yourself into it.
Dice que de todas maneras no hay mucha otra traducción ya. Enrique wanted to ask you something before that about the importance of Beckett in your work in general and also now.
Beckett was very important for me. A huge presence when I was young. In fact, I was writing fiction when I was in my teens and early 20s. Never very happy with it. And then I encountered Beckett, and it ruined me. I couldn't look past it. I didn't see how anyone could go beyond what he had done. And I stopped writing prose for years because of this. And just concentrated on writing poetry, essays, translations, but no fiction. And it was only later, when I got to be about 30 or 31 years old, that I stopped caring about all this. And I just started writing for myself without worrying about literary influences or even making literature. But there's no doubt that Beckett does have some influence on my work. But at the same time, I think our sensibilities are very different. He's a much bleaker writer than I am. And I think in the end, even though I admire him still so much, there's much in his work that I don't like that much.
Do you have any questions for him?
No todas.
Well, what I guess you brought up the term creative process, and so I'm trying to imagine what this is exactly. I'm curious to know how long it takes for you to come up with an idea for a novel, say. I mean, how many years or months or days do you walk around with this idea developing inside you before you actually sit down and begin to write? And then, when you do start writing, does the book come out the way you thought it would, or is it always different from what you expected?
Sí, ahí va. ¿Cuánto tiempo pasa desde esa pregunta?
Sí, que como sacaste el tema del
Sí, de
proceso
acuerdo.
creativo, que cuánto tardas en crear un libro y que si lo que sale al final era lo que habías concebido al principio.
Ah, vaya. Pongamos un libro que conocemos los dos, Bartleby y compañía. No sabía que lo escribiría cuando tardó 15 años como mínimo. Surgió de un amigo que me decía que no había literatura de interés después de Robert Musil, y me lo repetía con muchísima insistencia y parecía tener llevar toda la razón en esto cuando lo decía. Y en esa época, ahora de esto 30 años pues, asistía en Barcelona a la despedida de un escritor que se llamaba Foix, un escritor catalán, que se despidió en la universidad de su escritura. Dijo que no pensaba escribir un solo poema más. Tenía 85 años y yo entonces quería ser escritor, y me intrigó muchísimo que alguien dijera que ya no escribiría ningún otro poema en su vida. ¿Cómo se podía llegar a esta decisión? Y hay que pensar que en esta época yo quería escribir además, y me parecía horroroso saber de alguien que no quería escribir. Y de este amigo que me negaba la existencia de una literatura interesante después del 45, después de Musil, y de este homenaje a este poeta catalán, creo que fueron los orígenes de un libro que fue haciéndose con el tiempo. Y la segundo era...
Era lo que querías haber hecho.
Y ese es otro tema. Ahora sí puedes contestar a esto porque...
He says that it took him 15 years to write Bartleby and Company, which is a book that you know, and that it was the result of a friend of his who insisted all the time in the notion that after Robert Musil, The Man Without Qualities in 1945, it was impossible to write anything of interest anymore. And he was very impressed because the guy seemed to be right, at least when he said it. So a second thing happened then, which was that in the University of Barcelona, a revered poet who was 85 at the time, Fox said goodbye to poetry in front of everyone, he announced that he would no longer write. So he was terrified at these two thoughts because all he wanted to do is become a writer. So he was both terrified and intrigued at this appalling thought, and he began to write Bartleby and Company to prove that he could write something.
So it was the actual composition of the book, 15 years, or just it took him 15 years to sit down to write it after thinking about it?
¿Los 15 años son de concepción mental o de acción real de escribir?
De algo que llevas contigo y que no lo sabes,
Of something that you carry inside without knowing it,
como una sombra que te acompaña que no,
like a shadow that follows you,
pero que no eres consciente. Porque
but you're not conscious of it.
debo contarle, por si acaso le interesa, acerca del poeta Foix, el poeta catalán de 85 años, que estaba yo tan preocupado por el hecho de que no fuera a escribir más poemas, que toda la ciudad en Barcelona se enteró de mi preocupación, y un día recibí una llamada de parte del poeta a través de un poeta más joven, Pere Gifferrer, para decirme que estuviera tranquilo, porque el poeta no pensaba escribir más poemas, pero los soñaba.
So he wants you to know about this old man who was a marvelous poet, Fox, that Enrique Villamatas grew so worried about what he said that his preoccupation pervaded all of Barcelona, and it got to the ears of the poet himself, who grew very worried about Enrique's concern, and through another poet, Pere Gifferrer, allowed him to know. He wanted to appease him, saying, "Don't worry, I'm not going to write any more poems, but I'm going to dream them."
Oh.
Y respecto a la pregunta de las decepciones, de lo que se quería escribir, no se ha escrito, lo que ha quedado en el aire antes, ¿no? Decirle que sería muy interesante, pero no creo que no se hará nunca, que los escritores contaran lo que en todas las novelas, a modo de pistas incluso para los críticos, lo que quisieron hacer en un principio en su libro y lo que fue después el libro, es decir, una especie de mapa de decepciones que todos tienen cuando son muy ambiciosos en su trabajo, que lo contaran, dónde falló, dónde fue el fracaso, porque están las novelas siempre llenas de silenciosos fracasos, pero que no afloran a la luz, porque todos los novelistas estamos llenos de enemigos y de críticos enemigos también, que naturalmente lo aprovecharían como material para hundirnos. Pero si algún día se pudiera hacer este mapa de decepciones, como no se ha escrito nunca, sería muy útil en realidad para que todos conociéramos más de cada uno. Es decir, que podría ser algo que no está todavía escrito y que podría estar escrito y que ayudaría al trabajo de los demás. Pero lamentablemente parece imposible de que se pueda hacer por culpa de los cuervos.
About the second part of your question about the difference between the original intention and the final result, he says that it would be a very good idea that might help critics also to give hints about the grandiose failures that you have as you write what you intend to do, because he says that he fears that as you do, it has never been done like a map of failures on the course of writing, and that will be useful for critics whom he says that the writers have them as enemies very often, and he calls them ravens too, ravens. I think that two things here. One, that the audience needs some time for questions, and two, this is the second time around. We didn't have time even to begin to have you guys begin to talk. Well, you said quite a few very good things. Maybe there should be some time of continuation
Yes, I think
here or
at
in
the
Spain.
Cervantes Institute, the other time, we had headphones, and so the translations were coming simultaneously.
Yeah.
And so things went more rapidly. But so, nevertheless, we did say a few things, and
Yeah.
we'll answer questions if anyone has them.
So, time for questions from the audience. I believe you have to use, there are mics in the room.
No question.
Let him see. There's a question.
There's a question.
It's about the creative process. This question is toward Mr. Paul Auster. You didn't talk about your creative process yet.
There wasn't time. It usually takes me a long time to develop an idea. Sometimes I walk around with these characters in my head, things floating around, buzzing sounds, music, a kind of rhythm for the language. And it could be years before anything starts to crystallize. But I think usually my books begin not out of events, but out of the characters. And I certainly have never sat down and said to myself, I want to write a book about something. Never. So it's very organic and slow. It's like dreaming with your eyes open, I suppose. And then, in my own case, whenever I start a book, I have an idea of the story and where it's supposed to go. And then I start to write, and everything seems to change all over again. And so I always feel that I'm finding the book as I'm writing it. And the writing itself tells me what I should be doing. And ideas that seemed good in my head look awful on the page, and I discard them, and then new things come up as I'm working. So it's a very tentative, groping process. I have my bursts where I can go, for several weeks, and I'm writing with great certainty and sureness, and then long stretches where it's very difficult to advance. So I think most writers would say the same thing. There's somebody. Just throw it to her.
Hello, thank you. Were you not a little bit too nasty today about readers? Because my thought is that everyone gets whatever they get. And just the fact that they opened the book, they're not stupid anymore.
That's what I said.
But you said, didn't you say stupid? Didn't you talk about stupid readers who don't understand?
There are stupid readers. I mean, these are people, I suppose, a lot of critics, Enrique is talking about. It's absolutely astonishing to me how stupid some of the reviews that I've read, not only of my own work, but of all the writers, living and dead.
Excuse me, but there's a difference. There's a difference between reviewers who don't like the reviewers as much as the readers.
Well, but reviewers are reading the book, and
Paul, this is your wife interfering.
okay.
I have a saying that I think applies to this. It's not so much about stupidity, which I also believe there are stupid readers, but it's not about stupidity, but about prejudice. And as I like to say, I'm quoting myself, reading is like sex. If you don't relax, you won't enjoy it. So that what happens is that there are a lot of prejudices and expectations that create stupidities in the reader, and they can be very highly educated prejudices and expectations about what a book is.
I agree, Siri. Thank you.
Good.
One more question. One more question.
Y que le he dicho
Final
que
question.
sí.
Hi. Thank you all very much. This has been very fantastic interaction. Seeing you talk and
Two people can't speak the same language.
right, but so many things come out in a very interesting way. In any way, my question is about that very interesting interaction you say about the reader and the author meeting, being total strangers, but meeting in a very intimate way in a place. Is there any way that you as an author can access that intimate place that the reader had? Because when the reader reads it, it's by itself reading, doing that, whatever it does, and imagining that book, that version of the book in a sense. But is there any way that you also later on have access to that different place that the reader created when it read or experienced your book?
Well, I should say, it's an obvious thing to say, but I've read a lot more books than I've written. So I've been a reader much more than I've been a writer. And so I'm not in any different position from anybody in this audience. And some of my greatest human experiences have been in reading books. And I think as a writer, I have the sense, and I don't know if Enrique would agree, but I always have the sense that I'm addressing somebody, that there is a you out there that I'm talking to. A faceless, genderless being, but another human being, a sympathetic soul out there I'm writing for. And I think some of the writers that I like best have that quality in their work too, that you feel that you're being addressed as a human being, as an equal.
Enrique, si quieres podemos terminar así. Él dice que siempre que ha escrito le ha dado la sensación de que se lo hacía dirigiéndose a alguien que tiene simpatía hacia él, que crea una relación muy humana, que ha leído muchos más libros, obviamente, de los que ha escrito. Te pasa a ti y que los grandes escritores que ha leído le han dejado siempre la sensación de que le hablaban personalmente a él. Si querías hacer alguna observación al respecto, desde tu perspectiva.
Pues sí, que es una buena idea escribir para alguien que te tiene simpatía. Es más, que a partir de ahora lo haré siempre.
He thinks that it's a great idea to write for somebody who is sympathetic. From now on, he's going to do that.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much.